The alarm goes off at 6 in the morning. It vibrates against the wooden nightstand, making a loud, rattling sound. I do not reach for it immediately. I just lie there with my eyes open, staring up at the white ceiling. The morning light is barely coming through the curtains. It is a pale grey, soft light. My body feels so heavy, like I am glued to the mattress. I count to 10 in my head, telling myself that I will get up on 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nothing happens. I still do not move. Every morning, I play this exact same mental game with myself. I promise myself every night that I will wake up early, do some stretching, maybe go for a walk, and start my day with high energy. But when the morning actually comes, all those ambitious plans disappear. I finally reach out my hand, tap the snooze button on my phone, and pull the blanket back over my shoulders. Just 5 more minutes, just 5 tiny minutes of warm, comfortable sleep. The second alarm rings at 6:15. This time I know I cannot ignore it anymore. If I stay in bed any longer, I will start feeling guilty for wasting the morning. I throw off the heavy blanket, swing my legs over the side of the bed, and let my feet touch the cold wooden floor. A shiver goes right up my spine. That cold floor is better than any cup of coffee when it comes to waking you up. I sit on the edge of the bed for a moment, rubbing my eyes and running my fingers through my messy hair. The apartment is completely quiet. There is no sound from the street outside yet, except for an occasional distant bird or a far-off car engine. I stand up, stretch my arms up toward the ceiling, and feel my back pop. I make my bed right away. My mother always told me that if you make your bed first thing in the morning, you have already accomplished your first task of the day. It gives you a tiny sense of order before the chaos begins. I smooth out the sheets, fluff up the pillows, and head straight toward the kitchen. The kitchen is dim, lit only by the early morning sky through the small window above the sink. I turn on the warm overhead light and walk over to the electric kettle. I lift the kettle, take it to the sink, and fill it with fresh tap water. The sound of running water fills the silent room. I place the kettle back onto its base and press the power switch down. The little red indicator light turns on, and within seconds, I hear the quiet, low rumble of water beginning to heat up. While I wait, I walk over to the window and push it open a few inches. The morning air flows inside immediately. It is crisp, slightly damp, and smells like cool autumn air. I stand there by the open window, taking a deep breath in, letting the cool air fill my lungs. It feels refreshing. I grab my favourite mug from the shelf above the counter. It is a simple ceramic mug, slightly oversized, with a smooth beige handle. I scoop 2 big spoons of instant coffee powder into the bottom. I add half a spoon of brown sugar. The water in the kettle reaches a boiling point, bubbling rapidly and shutting off with a sharp click. I lift the heavy kettle and pour the steaming water into my mug. A cloud of warm, fragrant steam rises directly into my face. The dark coffee powder dissolves instantly, swirling into a deep brown liquid. I grab a small carton of milk from the fridge, pour a tiny splash into the cup, and watch the white milk swirl into clouds before blending completely. I stir it slowly with a small metal spoon. The clinking sound of the spoon against the ceramic mug is one of my absolute favourite sounds in the world. It signals that the day has officially begun. I carry my steaming mug over to the small dining table near the balcony door. I sit down in the wooden chair, resting my elbows on the table and wrap both of my hands around the warm mug. The heat feels amazing against my cold fingers. I take a small sip. It is hot, rich, smooth, and slightly sweet, exactly how I like it. I look out through the glass doors at the street below. A few neighbours are starting to walk out of their houses. A woman walking her small dog, a man in a dark jacket heading to his car, a delivery driver riding past on a quiet scooter. Everyone is moving slowly, easing themselves into the new day. I feel a sense of peaceful solitude in this hour. There are no notifications on my phone yet, no urgent messages to respond to, no loud noises, no deadlines breathing down my neck. It is just me, my coffee, and a quiet morning. Today was supposed to be a completely normal day, just an ordinary routine Tuesday. I had my entire schedule planned out in my head. I was going to finish some work on my laptop, clean up the living room, organise my bookshelf, do a quick grocery run, and cook a nice dinner at home. Simple, predictable, easy. I like routine. Routine gives me a feeling of safety and structure. But life has a strange way of disrupting our neat little plans, even on days when nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. By 7:30, the sun has risen completely, filling my apartment with bright, natural light. I drink the last cold drop of my coffee, take the empty mug to the sink, and give it a quick rinse. It is time to get to work. I walk into my small home office area in the corner of the living room. I adjust my chair, sit down, and open my laptop lid. The screen brightens up immediately, showing my desktop wallpaper, which is a quiet picture of a foggy pine forest. I open my notebook, grab a black pen, and write down my to-do list for today. Writing things down on paper helps me stay focused. My list for today looks like this. First, answer all unread emails from yesterday. Second, organise my digital media files and back up old project folders to my external hard drive. Third, wipe down the kitchen counters and vacuum the floor. Fourth, buy fresh vegetables and fruit from the market. Fifth, write a few pages in my journal. It seemed like a completely manageable list. Nothing on it was difficult or time-consuming. I opened my email inbox and started typing responses to various messages. My fingers clacked steadily against the keyboard. The time ticked by quietly. 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9:00 me. I was making good progress. I felt productive, focused, and calm. Everything was going smoothly, exactly according to plan. At around 9:45, I decided to take a short 10-minute break to stretch my legs and drink a glass of water. I walked away from my desk, stretched my arms, and headed toward the bathroom to wash my face and refresh myself. I walked into the small bathroom, turned on the light, and stepped up to the sink. As I turned the faucet on, I heard a strange, unusual sound. It was not coming from the tap itself. It was a faint, steady dripping sound coming from down below, inside the wooden cabinet beneath the sink. I paused, turned off the tap, and listened carefully. Drip, drip, drip. A slow, rhythmic sound. I frowned, feeling a sudden knot of tension in my stomach. I knelt down on the cold bathroom tiles, reached out, and pulled open the two small wooden cabinet doors under the sink. My eyes widened in shock. There was a puddle of standing water right on the bottom wood panel. A slow, steady stream of water droplets was falling directly from the flexible metal pipe connected to the main water valve. The bottom shelf was completely soaked. Worse than that, a cardboard box filled with spare hand towels and extra rolls of toilet paper was standing right in the middle of the puddle. The cardboard had turned into dark, soggy mush, absorbing water like a heavy sponge. My immediate reaction was pure denial. I stood there staring at the water, hoping that if I looked away and looked back again, the water would somehow disappear. But of course, it did not. The dripping kept going. Drip, drip, drip. Water was slowly overflowing from the cabinet shelf, beginning to drip onto the main bathroom floor. Panic started to set in. I am not a handy person. I do not know how plumbing works. I have never fixed a pipe in my life. My first instinct was to grab a bunch of paper towels and start soaking up the water as fast as I could. I threw paper towels into the cabinet, wiping the surface, but as soon as I wiped it clean, more drops fell from the pipe. It was useless. I needed to stop the leak at its source. I grabbed a small plastic bucket from the balcony and shoved it under the leaking pipe to catch the falling drops. Clack, clack, clack. The sound of water hitting the plastic bucket echoed loudly in the small room. Okay, at least the water was contained for the moment. Now I had to turn off the water supply valve. I reached my hand deep into the dark cabinet, grabbed the small metal knob attached to the wall pipe, and tried to twist it clockwise. It did not move. I tried again, pressing harder, turning with all my strength. My fingers slipped off the smooth metal. The valve was completely frozen in place, rusted solid after years of sitting in a damp space. I knelt on the cold floor, wiping sweat off my forehead with the back of my hand. I needed tools. I stood up, walked quickly to the hallway closet, and pulled out my small black toolbox from the bottom shelf. I opened the latches and flipped open the lid. I searched through the contents, hoping to find a big metal wrench or a pair of heavy pliers. But what did I actually have in there? A cheap yellow screwdriver set, a tiny claw hammer, a roll of silver duct tape, a tape measure, and a few random rusty nails in a plastic bag. That was literally it. I picked up the silver duct tape and looked at it desperately. Could I just wrap duct tape tightly around the leaking pipe joint? I walked back to the bathroom, dried the pipe with a towel, and wrapped 3 thick layers of duct tape around the connection. I held my breath, watching the pipe. For about 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then a tiny bulge formed under the tape and a slow trickle of water began leaking out from the edges of the tape. Duct tape was not going to fix this. The rubber washer inside the pipe joint was clearly dry, cracked, or completely broken. I needed an adjustable wrench to loosen the metal nut, a replacement rubber ring, and some plumber thread tape to seal the joint properly, and I had none of those things in my apartment. My entire morning plan was officially thrown out the window. It was past 10:30 now. I could not just leave a bucket under the sink and go back to typing emails on my laptop. What if the bucket overflowed while I was distracted? What if the pipe suddenly burst completely and flooded my entire apartment, along with the neighbour's apartment downstairs? The thought of causing water damage to the building terrified me. I had to go out immediately and buy the right tools. I rushed to my bedroom, pulled off my comfortable indoor clothes, and threw on a plain grey hoodie and a pair of dark jeans. I grabbed my wallet, my phone, and my house keys from the entry table. I took one last look at the bathroom, made sure the bucket was balanced properly under the dripping pipe, stepped out of my front door, and locked it behind me. The moment I stepped out of the apartment building and onto the street, the contrast was overwhelming. Inside my flat, everything had been quiet, warm, and controlled. Outside, the midday sun was bright and intense. The streets were busy, filled with the loud sounds of city life. Cars were zooming past, delivery trucks were reversing with loud warning beeps, and people were walking fast on the sidewalks, bustling past each other. The quiet morning routine I loved so much felt miles away. I walked quickly down the street toward the nearest bus stop. I did not even know where the closest hardware store was. I pulled out my phone, opened a map app, and typed in hardware store near me. The nearest proper hardware shop was about 3 miles away, located near an older commercial neighbourhood on the other side of town. That meant I had to take the local bus. I stood under the metal shelter of the bus stop, tapping my foot nervously against the pavement. Minutes felt like hours. Every time I looked at my watch, only 30 seconds had passed. My mind was still back in my bathroom, imagining the bucket slowly filling up with water. Finally, the heavy Blue City bus pulled up to the curb with a loud hiss of air brakes. The folding doors opened, and I stepped inside. The bus was moderately full. I walked down the aisle, found an empty seat near the back, and sat down against the window. The engine rumbled beneath my feet as the bus pulled away from the curb and merged into traffic. I rested my forehead against the cool glass window, watching the city buildings slide past. As the bus moved slowly through the crowded streets, stopping at every red light and bus station, my initial panic began to fade away. I looked around at the other passengers sitting in the seats near me. Right across the aisle, an older woman with silver hair was sitting quietly, holding a green fabric shopping bag on her lap. She was staring out the window with a calm, peaceful expression on her face. A few rows ahead, a young student wearing big headphones was tapping his fingers on his knee to a rhythm only he could hear. Near the front door, a man in a business suit was typing rapidly on his phone, looking stressed and rushed. Looking at all these different people, I realized something simple. Everyone in this bus had their own list of tasks for the day. Everyone had their own minor problems, their own sudden disruptions, their own unexpected turns. My little pipe leak felt like a huge disaster in my head because it ruined my perfect personal schedule. But in the grand scheme of things, it was just a tiny, harmless inconvenience. Water leaks happen, pipes get old, routines break. It is not the end of the world. Realizing this made me relax my shoulders and take a slow, deep breath. The bus arrived at my destination and I stepped off onto the sidewalk. The neighborhood felt older and charmingly chaotic. There were small family-owned shops lined up along the street, electrical repair stores, small tailor shops, and quiet bakery stalls. I walked down the narrow pavement until I saw a large red metal sign that read hardware and building supplies. I stepped through the open entrance into the store. The inside of the shop was amazing. It was a massive, dimly lit space, packed from floor to ceiling with wooden shelves. The air smelled strongly of cut iron, motor oil, machine grease, and old cardboard. There were rows of brass screws, copper pipes, power tools, rolls of wire, paint buckets, and heavy iron chains hanging from hooks on the wall. Behind a long wooden counter sat an elderly man wearing a navy blue work apron and small wire-rimmed reading glasses. He was carefully writing something in a thick paper ledger. I walked up to the counter, feeling a bit nervous, and confessed immediately that I knew almost nothing about plumbing. The shop owner looked up from his ledger, pushed his glasses up his nose, and smiled kindly at me. He had warm eyes and deep lines around his forehead that showed he had spent decades working with his hands. He asked me to describe the problem. I pulled out my phone and showed him a quick picture I had taken of the leaking pipe before leaving my apartment. He stared at the image on my phone screen for a few seconds, nodded his head slowly, and let out a soft chuckle. "Ah," he said in a calm, gravelly voice, "that is a classic issue. The rubber sealing ring inside that flexible hose degrades over time. When it dries out, water starts leaking through the threads. You do not need a plumber for this. You can fix it yourself in 10 minutes. He walked around the wooden counter, navigated through two tight aisles piled high with metal fittings, and returned with a heavy 10-inch adjustable wrench, a small plastic pack of rubber washers in various sizes, and a small roll of white plumber tape. He placed them on the wooden counter and explained everything step by step. He showed me how to adjust the wrench, how to wrap the white tape tightly around the pipe threads to create a waterproof seal, and how much pressure to use when tightening the nut. "Do not over-tighten it," he warned me, holding up a finger. "Just tighten it until it feels snug. If you turn it too hard, you will crack the plastic inside." I listened to his instructions carefully, nodding along. His calm, confident attitude gave me a sudden boost of confidence. I paid for the tools, thanked him warm-heartedly, and walked out of the store holding my small paper bag of supplies. When I stepped back out onto the sidewalk, I realized I had two choices. I could immediately run back to the bus stop, ride the bus home, and fix the pipe as quickly as possible. Or I could take a short pause. The bucket under my sink was large enough to hold hours of slow-dripping water. There was no real emergency anymore. I looked down the street. It was a beautiful, sunlit afternoon. The weather was pleasantly warm, with a light breeze rustling the leaves of the old oak trees lining the sidewalk. I decided to break my routine completely. Instead of heading back to the bus stop, I decided to just walk around this unfamiliar neighborhood for a while. Normally, I am a strict slave to my daily schedule. When I set